the college football season. My name is Mike Browning. I'm the host of the College Football Road Trip at cfbroadtrip.com. If you go to my website right now, I have recently posted about the second half of my trip to Ohio, which was to the Cincinnati-Miami game in Oxford. Oxford's a fun college town. I also spent a lot of time in the Dayton area and wrote about a lot of really cool things there. So go and check it out. In the meantime, we had some great games in Week 5. That Alabama-Georgia game was an amazing game last Saturday night. With that said, this week there's only one ranked versus ranked matchup, which of course we'll get to in our picks. But usually weeks like this is when you get a couple upsets that kind of spin things around a little bit. So we'll see if that happens this week. With all that said, let's go ahead and jump into this week's picks. We're going to start off with our Friday night game. We have Syracuse traveling to 25th ranked UNLV. UNLV showed up last week against Fresno State. There's obviously controversy and a new starting quarterback for UNLV, but they just went and just dominated Fresno. On the flip side, you have Syracuse, which looks like a decent team this year, a lot better than they've been the last couple years. But UNLV seems to be on a mission, especially with everything that's going on. They're also the home team in this one. So a long trip for Syracuse out to Vegas. So with all that said, I think it will be a close matchup that will go to the fourth quarter, but I think UNLV will find a way to win. I have UNLV winning at home over Syracuse on Friday night. Moving on to our Saturday matchups. The first one is one out of the Sun Belt. We have James Madison traveling to Louisiana Monroe. James Madison is a team that has dominated pretty much every team that they have faced so far this season. They absolutely put it to North Carolina a couple weeks ago. Louisiana Monroe is a team that's looked pretty decent, but when they went up against Texas, they were absolutely dominated by them, which is no surprise. But it kind of shows you where they're at. I think James Madison is going to be way too much for this Louisiana Monroe team. I have James Madison winning on the road at Louisiana Monroe. Our next game is an ACC matchup. We have Boston College traveling to Virginia. Both of these are 3-1 teams, I believe. Boston College has their big win at the beginning of the season over Florida State, which obviously does not look very good right now. They then lost to Georgia Tech along the way. They lost to Missouri along the way. Missouri, they looked very good against Missouri, just couldn't pull it out in the end. In the meantime, you have a Virginia team that, again, is looking better this year than they've looked the past couple years. I just don't think they're quite up to the Boston College degrees. So I'm going to have Boston College in this one. Boston College wins on the road at Virginia in ACC play. Next, let's go to an intriguing Big Ten matchup. We have Rutgers traveling to Nebraska. Rutgers is 4-0 on the season. They had a big win against Washington last week, which is one of the games that I mispicked. I've had Washington in that one and was wrong, obviously, as Rutgers is still undefeated. It's looked pretty good so far this year. On the flip side, you have Nebraska, who's also looked really good this year. They have one loss on the season to a ranked Illinois team, at least at the time they were ranked, before Illinois lost to Penn State. I still think Nebraska is on the uptick this year. They've looked really good. Even their loss to Illinois was only by 7 points in a game that they could have won if things just went a slightly different way. Eventually, I think Rutgers is going to have their stronger competition starting this week. I think they're a good team. I just don't think they're as good as their undefeated record shows them, especially on the road this week. I have the Huskers. Nebraska wins at home over Rutgers in Big Ten play. Next, let's go to a Big 12 matchup. We have Texas Tech traveling to Arizona. I think Texas Tech being undefeated in Big 12 play so far this year is one of the surprises, especially after the way they looked against Washington State in non-conference play earlier this year. They were able to come back and win a nail-biter against Cincinnati last week. On the flip side, you have Arizona, who got dominated by Kansas State a couple of weeks ago, but then beat Utah last week. Now, Utah's not quite as good without Cam Rising, so it's not a huge surprise, but they did win that game in a pretty dominating fashion. So the question is, which one of these teams is really pretending more? Arizona's the home team in this one. Again, toss-up games, I tend to go with the home team. So I think the Wildcats are going to be able to pull out this one. I have Arizona winning at home over Texas Tech in Big 12 play. Next, let's go to an SEC matchup. We have number 12, Ole Miss, traveling to South Carolina. Ole Miss is coming off their big loss to Kentucky last week. It was a competitive matchup, and Kentucky found a way to pull it off and give Ole Miss their first loss. On the other side, you have South Carolina. South Carolina struggled in their week 1 win against Old Dominion, but then they dominated Kentucky, the same Kentucky team that just beat Ole Miss. So you really don't know what team is going to show up in this one. I think Ole Miss is going to want to fight back. They're going to want to show that they're still in the SEC contention after their loss last week. And again, it wasn't a huge loss along the way, but I think that they're going to want to bounce back, and bounce back they will. I have number 12, Ole Miss, winning on the road at South Carolina. Going back to the ACC, and that's weird to say with one of the teams being in California, we have number 8, Miami, traveling to Cal Berkeley. This is where College Game Day is going to be this week. Miami has, again, looked really good so far this season. They did struggle a little bit last week, but found a way to win. On the flip side, you have California. They started off the season really well, but had their first loss of the season last week at Florida State. It was a very competitive matchup, but Florida State found a way to get their first win against Cal. And if you're Florida State's first win of the season, it kind of shows that you're not the greatest team out there. Miami's just going to be way too much. Number 8, Miami wins on the road at Cal. Next, going back to the Big Ten, we have Iowa traveling to Ohio State. Iowa is a team that has looked pretty good so far this year. They do have their loss earlier in the season to Iowa State, where Iowa State came from behind to win that one. Other than that, they've started to put points together. They have a much better offense this year than they have last year. Ohio State is just another beast, though. They have run through every opponent that they have played this year. Now, granted, they have not played the hardest schedule to this point, but that doesn't always mean anything in this, parity-ridden college landscape that's going on right now. So the fact that they've dominated every team every week is a good sign for Ohio State. I think it's going to continue this week. Iowa will keep it competitive for about a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, and then Ohio State will pull away in the second. Ohio State wins at home over Iowa in Big Ten play. Now, our one ranked versus ranked matchup of the week, we have number 9 Missouri traveling to Texas A&M. On one side, you have the Aggies, who lost their first game of the year to Notre Dame, but have won every game since then. You have Missouri, on the other hand, who's undefeated so far this year, but the last couple weeks they've kind of struggled. They really didn't deserve to beat Vanderbilt a couple weeks ago, and then against Boston College last week, they eked out a 6-point win. So if you're struggling to win games against the caliber of Vanderbilt and Boston College, nothing against those teams, that doesn't mean that you're really a top 10 matchup. A&M's going to be playing at home in this one. They're going to have the 12th man behind them. I think that A&M's going to be able to pull it off. I have Texas A&M winning at home over Missouri in SEC play. So those are the Week 6 games. Again, go out, check out my blog entry for my trip to Miami. We'll be heading to the Georgia-Texas game in Austin here in a couple weeks, which is really exciting, but more on that to come. Go enjoy the Week 6 games, everyone. We'll talk to all of you again next week.